Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I have Dr. Bill Campbell back on the show. And last time he was talking through a case study that he's going to run, and that case study has now been run. The results haven't been analyzed, but it's actually been done. And this case study was Bill himself going through a high carbohydrate diet protocol to kind of look at this question of, can you lose fat on very high carb diet, and particularly consuming foods that are highly insulinogenic with a high glycemic load? And is there this terrible hormone response that inhibits fat loss, or can you still lose fat during this period of time? And so his objective was done. He lost 10% of his body weight over the past months and executed everything as he needed to. And you're going to hear some of the foods he was eating, and this wouldn't be your classic bodybuilder diet. Protein wasn't very high, carbohydrates were at 60% plus, and he was eating many processed foods that you would say don't have the best place within a diet. So did it go as he expected? We're going to kind of dig into that and see what happened, talk about what happened to his testosterone and things like this. Then we dive into one of his greatest hits from Body by Science, where they looked at what causes a weight loss plateau, metabolic adaptation or a lack of dietary adherence. We dig into what actually is going on there, what happens in most people's diets, what the practical take-homes are for you as a dieter or as a coach who coaches people for fat loss and things like this. As always with Bill, a really, really insightful and great chat. And as a reminder, guys, here at Revive Stronger, we're an online coaching company. We help people drop fat. So a lot of the things that we touch on today, we coach people through this to maintain their muscle mass, to drop the fat, whether or not they're going for the bodybuilding stage, a photo shoot, or just want to feel and look healthier. This is something that we're doing with them. So if you're interested in doing coaching with us, you can always find that link in the description below. We make sure to keep our coaching very, very communicative. Super important for coaching, as you might expect. Even though it's online, it's kept very personal with multiple means of being able to do that. And we really pride ourselves on that service that we provide. So if you want to learn more, as I said, it's in the description below. You'll find a link to our online coaching. But without further ado, let's get into the chat with Bill. Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I have Bill Campbell back on the show. It was 7 months ago we last spoke, or that was at least it was last released, Bill. So I can't believe it's quite been that long. How have you been? How are you doing?
I've been great, doing well, and thank you for having me back on. I love our conversations. Just sitting in my Florida weather today.
We were just talking off air, and I'm always jealous of the weather over there in Florida. And in London here, we're already starting to like put our woolly coats on and wrap up because it's getting pretty cold, even though I'm sat here in a vest. But yeah, once you train, I always find I get really warm for the rest of the day once I train, which is quite nice. Kind of kicks off the metabolism in some way. So actually, something we spoke about, and I had already told Bill I wanted to catch up on, was we left that podcast talking about this case study that you were performing on yourself, where you were going to kind of test the assertion of people going low carb to try and lose fat, and how, hey, if you're high carb, it's not going to be as effective fat loss, or maybe it even can prevent fat loss in some way. So you're doing this diet of high insulinogenic foods, really high carb, in fact, kind of higher carb than maybe some people even would think you would go, because your protein was kept, I think you were keeping your protein relatively quite low compared to, like, I don't know, bodybuilders who are keeping 1 gram per pound plus of protein. So how did it go? What updates can you give us?
Yeah, so I finished the case study, and the goal was to lose 10% of my body weight. So I started in, I think it was March 1st, and I weighed 231 pounds. And I'll just do that math. About 105 kilograms. And again, the goal was I'm going to stay on this high carbohydrate, high glycemic load, and likely a very high insulin producing diet until I lose 10% of my body weight, which would have put me to about 207 pounds, or about 104.5 kilograms. And just within the last month, at the end of September, I had hit the 10% weight loss goal. And I have not had an opportunity yet to do a lot of the analysis. But what I can say is eating a very high carbohydrate diet. So think of a lot of processed foods. So sodas, soft drinks, cereal, high sugar cereals, a lot of packaged foods. So things like that.
Do you
I
have,
was able
sorry,
to
Bill,
lose.
do you
What's
have
that?
what did like a day of eating look like so we can like visualize it? What was like a standard day for you?
Well, just you tell me. Give me any day you want in the last 6 months. Just throw out a day, and I'll tell you what I ate.
Were you tracking on MyFitnessPal or something like this?
It's called Macros First. Yes. Yep.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of that one. There's so many apps out there now to be able to track them. I like found MyFitnessPal and then it's just like, hey, this has all my foods in here now. It's like I don't want to have to think about changing to a different one and how they work. So let's
Yes.
go like just a month ago or something, like the 25th of the last month,
All right. So
September.
September
Actually, you
20,
finished. When did you say you finished? End of September.
end of September. Right.
So maybe the
Okay.
25th of September if you are still dieting then.
All right. So that day I had up just about 2,000 calories, 317 grams of carbs, 83 grams of protein, 48 grams of fat. So this was 62% carbs. So 60% that's usually what I was probably likely around there. I have one of my research members is analyzing a lot. All right. So that day's food, oatmeal with a banana, onion flavored rings, think potato chips, basically a burrito bowl. So rice, black beans, no chicken, cinnamon toast crunch, very high sugared cereal with some milk, and then another packaged Cheetos, like snack food. So that was that day. Let's just go back to, let's go August 25th. Let's see what I did that day. So that was a 55% carbohydrate day. This was 2,100 calories. So Doritos and soda, so Pepsi. Another rice bean burrito. And let's see, Mexican rice, more tortillas, cheese, breadcrumbs. So that's a meal. I know what that is. That's a meal that my wife made. So
Yes.
chicken. Yeah. So what was my protein then? Well, protein was still only 94 grams, so it was still low. And then again, I had chocolate chip cookies and more crunchy Cheetos, packaged foods. So that's a very typical day.
Yeah, this is, I guess, as a personal trainer, and if I saw this diet, I'd be like, hey, this is maybe not the best diet to be trying to lose weight on. And I guess that was the goal, right? You wanted to kind of be like, hey, look at the foods I'm eating, look at the kind of macro profile. A lot of people would look at that and be like, that doesn't look like a fat loss diet. And here you are having lost 10% of your body weight, which is no small feat, especially because, well, not especially, but it's a lot of weight for you too, because you're a heavier individual compared to, say, a smaller male or female. So it's like over 20 pounds that you're losing here. So that's,
Yeah.
how was it for you? Because I guess, have you eaten that way before? Like, was it quite a change for you?
So I had essentially gotten my weight up to an obese status, clinically obese. So I was at 231 pounds, which we said was what, 105 kilograms to start. And I had maintained that for about 6 months prior to dieting, because I didn't want to just go up and then come back down. I thought that I didn't want it to be that. So, I had been eating. So the only thing that changed, my exercise stayed the same for again, previous 6 months into this. So I resistance trained about 3 days per week. Another 3 days, I would do some type of cardio, whether it was walking or light jogging. And so yes, so the really only thing that changed was the calories. Now, how do I normally eat? I am never to be someone to be confused with eating a really what most people would consider a healthy diet. That's not me. I am somebody who typically, for my entire adult life, pretty high protein, about, around 1.8 to 2.2 grams per kg. Not much fast food. There's not much of that, but snacks. So I'll eat cookies. I get pizza on the weekends. I typically would eat a lot of fruit smoothies that I make in my house. So not quite to this extreme, and with the processed food. So a lot more processed foods, but it's not like I had just adopted them. I eat I've eaten processed foods my entire life. And I think the other important thing to mention is I'm not advocating that people diet like this. I was just getting a little fatigued with some in our space saying, you have to reduce carbs to lose weight. Like, what are you doing if you're not reducing your carbs? And I said, no, I don't believe that to be true based on the literature. I want to do a case study that would meet the scientific threshold for publishing as a case study so that I can help coaches with clients, not to say, hey, diet like this, but to say, here's a scientific case study that hopefully will be published that people can point to say, you don't have to eliminate carbs to lose weight. Now, it's not the best decision to eat like this because it keeps your hunger fairly high, but let's just focus on calories. And I would suggest this: if somebody starts their weight loss journey eating like I was eating, I would be very reluctant to start changing a lot about what they do. And instead, I would just try to help them eat less of what they're currently doing. So I think there is a lot of utility in meeting somebody where they're at and also being able to demonstrate in a scientifically controlled study that you can lose weight. And when I say scientifically controlled, I got blood work pre-post. I did a 4-compartment model body composition. So I did DEXA, BOD-POD, in-body, so for body water, took some psychological questionnaires about my hunger, did resting metabolic rate. So again, everything was controlled so that this will meet the scientific threshold for publication. And just so we can appreciate, other people have done this. They did it with a lot of media attention. So I don't really have any media attention, but I've done this at a scientific level. So that's what I'm contributing here.
Yeah, the famous one I can think of is like the famous Twinkies study where he was eating a lot of the Twinkies there. But I like that this is done in a more scientifically rigorous manner. And I also like the framing of where your diet was before to where it is now in terms of, I guess it was more of a flexible diet and that like 80-20, hey, I'm still enjoying like 20% of my calories from discretionary. It's just a kind of random framing, like you're getting plenty of fruit, fiber, that sort of thing. Were you, because I noticed you're having beans quite often, was that like to make sure you're hitting were you trying to hit a certain fiber threshold or just?
No, I think those were just happened to be days that I would have beans. So yeah, I didn't track I mean, I'm sure fiber's tracked, but I had no goal for fiber intake. My main, the most challenging thing was to just not allow protein to be high because no protein shakes, no protein bars. Again, every day I tried to get about 60% of all calories. Oh, and I also want to say, basically, there were 2 days of calories. I either ate about 2,100 or I ate about 3,100. So 3,100 calories was my maintenance. That was allowing me to maintain my heavy obese state. And then throughout the entire, I don't know, let's just say it was 7 months or 8 months, I would diet with 2,100 calories most days, but on the weekends or if I'm traveling or on vacation, I would go back to like a diet break of 3,100 calories. So across the board, that's now, I will say the first 2 weeks I took an aggressive approach. I don't want to say I panicked, but being that heavy for 6 months, I'm like, hey, not only am I highly motivated, I want to get some of this fat off. So in retrospect, I wish I hadn't done that because then it just would have been the same the entire time. But also,
Sure,
I didn't want to have that much fat. And once I got through those 2 weeks, again, that was planned. I didn't wake up the first day because I also believe that, or at least my thinking now is, it may make sense to be more aggressive early in a diet. So I was just implementing something that I actually think is beneficial for some people.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I think it makes sense to kind of go hard early when you're in kind of the freshest state and most body fat as well. And it also creates a lot of buy-in. I think there's research showing that, right, where it creates quite a bit of buy-in for people where they see like a weight loss initially. So you had purposely pushed your weight up to this kind of this obese state. Like that wasn't just you going through life. That was like, hey, I'm doing this for research. I'm going to push my body weight up to this kind of inflated position.
I want to say partially. So I knew I was gaining weight and I didn't do anything to stop it, knowing that I was going to do this.
Okay.
Did I purposely have a goal of getting to 105 kilograms? No, but I knew once I got, I got to the point where I'm like, hey, I know I'm going to I know I'm going to challenge this carbohydrate insulin model, and I don't want to get any heavier, but I need to maintain this for a while so that I'm training at this body weight so that when I do start this, the only thing I'm changing is my calories. So I was eating that same diet for about 6 months prior, before I even started the weight loss. Again, because I didn't want to all of a sudden drop protein, because now that's a new intervention. So really the only thing that changed was calories. That's it. I just reduced my calories.
I can't imagine because of the habit of eating such a high protein diet now, I can't imagine going for such a long period of time with that low of protein. Did you find, I'm guessing you have other fat loss phases to compare this to, did you find any distinct differences this time around versus those times? Like how was like hunger, energy levels, performance, sleep? Was there any kind of major differences you noticed?
Yeah, so you're wise. I have done other things like this throughout my adult life, just never at the level of a scientific study. So I basically live my life now dieting, gaining weight, dieting, gaining weight. That could be two ways. One, I'm a fat loss scientist, so I like doing that. And two, I'm just not very good at maintaining a leaner physique. It's not a skill that I'm good at. And I guess I just embrace it because, well, I'll go on a diet and learn, and that'll generate some research ideas. The something that was reinforced was my anticipation of starting this was worse than the actual implementation. I always feel like, oh, I don't want to go on a diet. But then when I'm actually on the diet, I do. It's not a big deal. At least that's been my experience. I will remember this. I've been not that heavy in the past, but I have had weight gain in the past. Probably I was about 7 kilograms more than what I had ever been in my life. So definitely heavier than what I'd ever been. I noticed a couple things. One, and again, I maintained that body weight for 6 months. So it wasn't like I was just there for a week and dropped it. But I noticed just in walking upstairs, I would be more out of breath. And I didn't think of that. And then my dad's overweight much of his life. And he asked me that question. He goes, hey, now that you're this heavy, have you ever noticed that you're out of breath? And I'm like, yes. I do notice that, but I didn't really conceptualize it until he said. The second thing that that started to bother me was tying my shoes, just putting shoes on. My belly was a little bit getting in the way, and I'm like, I don't like this. And then the last thing, I would go to bed at night and I would have some burning like in my my chest, and I would go drink water and it didn't help. And I was like, this is weird. Like so I told my parents, and by the way, I come from an obese family. And I asked my parents, I'm like, yeah, I got this burning. And they said, yeah, that's acid reflux or GERD. I'm like, oh, I had never had that before. Like, I didn't know what that was. And it was painful. So I had that. And then obviously once I lost weight, gone. So I haven't had that feeling in months. So those are the three things: getting out of breath, when I walk upstairs, having acid reflux, and then just not, I can feel my stomach. But other than that, my sleep was the same. I didn't feel like I had less energy. And I'd been pretty lean in my life too, especially when I was younger and I did bodybuilding. I never feel a lot different. And I know that's not everybody's. Some people just feel horrible when they gain that much weight. I can't say I felt horrible.
Yeah, the acid reflux is not a nice symptom of kind of, some people get it when they're massing and they're not even necessarily even that kind of far gone, but just eating so much food. But then, yeah, noticing that for the first time, and then obviously it's not going to help your sleep the best either. How about when you were dieting down? I guess you'd done diets where, like, I'm thinking if I'm losing that much weight, probably by the end of the diet, I'm eating quite a lot of fruit and vegetables, things to keep me full, higher protein, this sort of thing. And obviously you weren't able to do that. Did you find that hunger was kind of harder to manage this time round?
I can't say that it was, just trying to remember. And again, I'm someone who interprets the protein research as the preponderance of the evidence of that evidence says higher protein diets do help with satiety and satiation. Not all research, but when protein either shows it helps with suppressing hunger or there's no difference. I've never read a study where protein makes you more hungry. So thinking about that in my head, I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be miserable. But no, I didn't. But I mean, I think my wife would say if when my mind is set on something, there's just really no, So yeah, no difference from what I can remember about hunger levels. But I would never advise somebody to diet like this, because what I know is you eat all these highly processed foods that I was eating. Those are the worst things for hunger.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you highlight a good point in there, how it's to some extent individual. Like there'd be some people that probably could do similar to you and they manage it okay. And then there'd be others who are just like ravenously hungry and they haven't got that kind of committed mindset like you have. Like you said, you've done bodybuilding, you go through these phases regularly. Whereas if it's like someone more gen pop, it's their first diet, they'll probably get to this point, like you said, you can kind of just, it's a nice example of intervening and not having to change their diet as a whole. You just eat less. And then they'll probably get to a point where they're like, hey, Bill, I'm really hungry here. And you can be like, well, you can kind of swap out this for this and you'll probably find you're more full.
Yes. Yep.
And there was something interesting during this, and you mentioned it via email. If I don't know how much you can speak to it, but you noticed your testosterone levels, you said nearly doubled. I don't know if you have even figures for that. I
do, yeah. So I checked them because I thought we might talk about that. So I did blood work as soon as I started this. So I don't know, like a week prior before starting the diet. And my testosterone historically has been average. So the range is what, like, let's just say 250 to, do you know the ranges?
I might actually have it here. So the range, actually, no, I don't. Wait, do I? No, I have a range from a series of case studies from bodybuilders. They had 543 to 922 nanograms per deciliter. So, okay. It's not a bad.
No, so clinically low was like 250. So less than 250, let's say to 1100. So if you're less than 250, that's clinically low. And if you're more than 1100, I think they would say that's clinically high, depending on the lab. So you're saying, and this is helpful, you're looking at bodybuilders where it's been around 500 to 900. So I've always been in that 500 to 900 range. The 10 times that I've had it measured before, probably in the 600s or 700s if my memory serves me correctly. So my pre-blood work, when I'm at my heaviest, when I have the most body fat, it was 267. So it was low. So very close to being clinically deficient. At the end of my study, my total testosterone was like 650, 627. So more than doubled. So for being that overweight, in my opinion, caused my testosterone to plummet, which we believe that happens. And all I was doing is, yes, I lost body fat, so I was restoring where I was at. So I wouldn't phrase it as I doubled, even though I did, if you'd look at beginning to end. But that to me, that just solidifies. We know the average testosterone levels have gone down over the last few decades, and we know that adiposity has increased in developed countries. So that could be the primary reason. And again, there may be other explanations as well. And I also got measured my free testosterone, and that stayed pretty stable. That was like in the middle, maybe moderate, middle to high at the beginning and end. So my free testosterone didn't change much. And I know there's some people who suggest that it's your free testosterone, which is really where you're going to get a lot of the symptoms of low testosterone. So free testosterone didn't really change much, but total did.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I know I don't know enough about these sort of things, but I have heard that free testosterone is like for muscle gain as well. That's maybe the one that matters more than your total testosterone. But I think it's also a good kind of sign of, I think a lot of people maybe even go on medication for TRT and things. And it's like, hey, could you do anything in your lifestyle to improve? So obviously I imagine like your weight training, you take care of your sleep, things like this that are going to help you try and eat. Well, I guess probably even if you improved the diet post this, like you eat less processed foods, things like this, you could even see that rise. And I think it's just a good one. Again, if someone is obese, like, hey, just losing the body fat there is going to help in a big way.
It was true in my case. And remember, that was the only change I made, was just losing body fat. I also measured, we also did, in addition to body composition, which I did not analyze that yet, but we also did a 9-site B mode ultrasound so we can look at the totality of my muscle thickness. So did me cutting my protein by all of this, by pretty large amounts, was I able to maintain my lean muscle mass throughout this diet? I had my colleague do that because he's the expert in that. So that'll be interesting. If I have to guess, and again, I have no idea, I don't think I lost any muscle mass, but my resistance training didn't change. So the stimulus was there, but clearly the protein level was decreased. My wife will say that I definitely lost muscle. But yeah, so it will be fun to look at the data. And I actually have the meeting with my research team in 2 days, where we're gonna start laying out the plan for analyzing this and writing it up.
That will be interesting because I know, again, it's that like the 1 gram per pound or 2.2 per kilo is like the kind of general recommendation that you see out there. And I think there was a recent maybe meta-analysis that looked at like, hey, 0.7 grams per pound is sufficient to be able to maximize like hypertrophy possibly. So you'll have even been below that, I imagine. Well, no, you're certainly below that. So it'll be interesting to see if you can get away with even less, which in some ways will hurt me as a bodybuilder, but also I think it's good to see that because it means it just opens up opportunities. A lot of, again, more gen pop, they're not into protein in the same way we are. And if they can just increase it by a small amount and see the same benefit, that's pretty cool. I guess the question would be, if you had higher protein, could you have even grown muscle during this period of time? But I mean, you're a pretty advanced lifter, so it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and I'm 48, so it's not. I'm also fighting against the natural what I believe is the yes. So if I'm maintaining, I might be winning at this point.
I wouldn't. I didn't think you were 48, Bill. I don't know what age I would have said, but I wouldn't have said you were getting close to your 50s there. So you're doing very well.
Oh, thank you.
And I think the audience will agree. And I mean, the testosterone levels also pretty good, I guess, for that period of time too, because I guess that's when it's starting to look at dipping. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. And again, this is going to force me to really dive into that research literature because I don't have this. I have not done that before. I mean, past the cursory levels of what I know is low and high.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be fun for me to learn more about testosterone changes and adiposity.
I have one more question, I think, on surrounding this, Bill. If you were to maintain, say, this body weight and body composition for 6 months now, and then try and lose another 10% of your body weight doing the same approach, do you think there'd be any differences to the outcomes? Do you think you'd find it harder?
That's a good question. So let me just think. So if I'm 207, I just want to do that math real quick. Whew, yeah, I would feel like I would need to. I believe, now I don't know, but I believe I would have to probably stay on. I would say work harder, but I wouldn't work harder because I would keep the same approach. But I would imagine it probably would take me a longer period of time to lose that, because when I was 231, again, never had been that high, or 105 kilograms. That fat came off pretty quickly early. Now that probably wouldn't happen. And it's funny, I am going to, my next personal case study will be a very, very severe rapid fat loss study. Probably sometime in the next few months. So I just need to make sure again that everything's stable going into that. So I will do nothing like this, but I'm going to do a severe deficit and high amounts of cardio to see what happens.
That would be interesting, and we have to talk about it. But yeah, I guess another 10% would get you pretty damn lean. And I'm just thinking, hey, you've got less body fat to lose, like you said, so it's going to take you longer. You'd want the rate of loss to probably be slower, and it'll probably adapt more so down. Like you won't be as burning many calories from your day-to-day living because you're a smaller person. And then I wonder what the hey, if you've got less fat to almost protect the muscle from being lost, if you weren't having higher protein, then would there be more risk because you're a leaner individual? And then
I would think so.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess this case study that you've done is very appropriate for like the general person looking at it, but you probably wouldn't give it to again, a bodybuilder who's like, hey, I'm already 15% body fat. I want to get down. Yeah. Follow this. You'll be just fine. It's like, might not work out for you the same way.
There's no bodybuilder that would accept this.
No.
I don't think. Yeah, I would be, if I did another 10%, that I would be very lean by the end of this. I mean, leaner than I've probably been in maybe 20 years. So yeah, it would be interesting. I'm not going to do it.
No, I don't blame you. With the rapid fat loss diet that you're going on to, do you have a certain rate of loss you're going for, or a certain size of calorie deficit, just out of interest?
So I'm still developing this, and again, my team's going to help me. My research assistants will help, but it'll be somewhere in the ballpark of a gram per pound, or maybe 0.75 grams per pound, or 1.6, maybe 2.2 grams per kg of body weight. And that'll be it. So almost as much pure protein as I can do. So what would that put me at? That would put me at, I don't know, probably around 800 calories, 900 calories total. And then what I want to do is mimic a study that I reviewed in my research review, where they had obese males basically have an 85% caloric deficit and basically eating 320 calories per day. And they had them walk for about 8 hours per day for 4 days straight, and then also do some arm cranking exercise. So I won't go as aggressive, but I'll have more protein. And I'm not going to do arm cranking exercise. I don't know if I'm going to have to make sure I can handle walking 8 hours. But if I can, that's what I would like to do. I would like to mimic that study as much as I can. And again, I'd like to get blood work, do the whole 4-compartment body composition model, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a huge calorie deficit that you're going to be in. I mean, if you're doing the 8 hours as well, that's going to be a lot of steps.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what the time course, like how long do you run that for?
But in that study, they did 4 days of that. So 4 days long. And then they refed them back to pre-diet levels for 3 days. So, and then basically, and this is a really awesome study about rapid fat loss. And let me just say, the reason I'm really interested in this, my lab we did a rapid fat loss study, and I just submitted it for publication. So I'm really, really excited about and because I've changed my mind on some of this stuff with rapid fat loss. But in that other study, they also measured their body composition a month later and then a year later. And usually those types of diets will cause hyperphagia and body fat overshoot. So you're technically doing more harm than good when you're that aggressive. But they found in that study, the body fat was essentially maintained. They didn't lose lean mass. Now, again, it was only 4 days, but it was a very severe 4 days. And there was no resistance training in during those 4 days. So to me, it kind of impressed upon me, which is what I think. You can be very aggressive, but it needs to be very short. So you need to get in and get out before your body starts to adapt by targeting lean tissue stores. So that's kind of been my thinking on this. So yeah, I want to just see on myself what would happen. So I'm already thinking, and I'm scared. I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do that for 4 days. But yeah, like I don't want to take protein shakes because I want to try to get as full as I can on this protein. So those are my thoughts right now. So yeah, you're hearing me think through this. right now. And maybe I do a 7-day study and it's not quite as aggressive. I don't know yet, but it's going to be something in that 4 to 7 day period, measuring body water, getting, all of the blood work, all that stuff as well.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
That'd be really interesting. It's kind of one of those, like, do you want to rip the plaster off like quickly or just like slowly take it off? And there's definitely personality types that like one or the other. So this is like ripping it off quickly. And so if you find that it's not that bad, like you can manage it for a week. I know, I think Martin McDonald, I've had him come on talk about rapid fat loss. He's quite a big fan. Like he almost says like go as aggressive, like the quote is here, he says like go as aggressively as you can, like almost as hard as you can. And Menno is pretty a big fan of like these very aggressive short periods of time. Whereas I've only ever really done like mini cuts, which is like a 1 to 1.5% body weight loss per week, which is a little aggressive. Like it's pretty aggressive, but it's not like this where you'll be losing way over that, I imagine.
Yeah. In that, what I call the crazy study, I think they had lost 4 or 5% of their body weight in those 4 days. Now, again, some of that was body water. So, and that's one thing I've appreciated with my own study that we didn't publish yet, plus this one. If you're doing anything that's aggressive, that's 2 weeks or less, you have to measure body water because those fluid changes are pretty massive. And then interestingly, within about 2 more weeks, so within a month, everything relative to body water is pretty much back to normal, even with your continued weight loss maintenance. So you got to be careful about how you're interpreting anything with rapid fat loss, unless you're bringing in body water assessments, because that can really, and again, that happened to us as I was analyzing our data in my own study, came to a completely different conclusion before we brought in the water and analyzed that. That made me think, oh, this wasn't good. And I'm like, oh, well, actually it wasn't bad.
That makes so much sense because even when you think, because people think about, again, like going low carb and you drop like the water weight and the glycogen, but when you're going pure protein, you're dropping any fiber, gut content, like all of these things as well. So like it's not pure fat loss that you're seeing for sure during this period of time. But I remember a while ago there was, and I think I spoke to Menno about it, being a rate limiter of like fat loss per day. Like there's only a certain amount of fat you could lose per day. Do you think cool. Do you think that is a thing, or like have you seen anything on that?
No, I haven't ever searched that, but I love the concept. Yeah, see, what would make me think is no, if you could stay active 24 hours per day, that energy is gonna come from somewhere. Now that's not to say there wouldn't be a huge adaptation or rebound after that, but yeah, I mean, my gut would say, again, theoretically, I don't know if there would be I mean, clearly there's going to be an upper limit to what you can do with physical activity. And again, let's assume you're eating zero food. So yeah, I guess at some point you're limited by how much activity can you do in a given period of time. And I think this would then invite the whole energy compensation model. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where your body adapts to exercise, so you're not really burning as many calories over the course of the day. That was popularized by Herman Ponzer.
Yeah.
You familiar with any of that stuff?
Yeah, his book Burn. Yeah,
yes, that's it.
I definitely. Yeah, I haven't read the book, but I've heard the theoretical models and everything like this, and I think that there's definitely something to it, like where at least I can anecdotally say, like in contest preps with clients, like when you ramp up steps, I remember wearing a weighted vest, 10 kilogram weighted vest for about 20,000 steps a day that I was using it for, and being stood for the majority of my day. And it was like, I would like just, you have to keep dropping calories and like the body just, whatever happens, like I just got fatigued elsewhere and I was better at conserving it. I walked more, I don't know, less like vigor in my walking, that sort of thing. So I think there's probably something to it, but I don't know where you stand with that.
Based on my reading, I also think there's something to it, but it's not anywhere close to how the media likes to describe it or sensationalize it. I mean, there's articles that will say exercise is worthless for fat loss. And I'm like, you'll never find a study where they gave overweight or obese individuals an exercise program and they didn't lose body fat. Maybe not weight. Weight's a little tricky because when you put sedentary people even on a walking program, they actually typically they'll gain some lean mass. So it looks like they haven't lost any weight, but when you measure fat, so yeah, that whole model, something to it. And by the way, Dr. Trexler, he's getting his postdoc with Dr. Herman Poncer.
Yes, he is.
So yeah, so he would be in my network. He would be the expert that could just talk probably for hours on that. And I don't even know where he stands. I just know, again, my reading on it was yes. And intuitively, okay, here's what I ask my students. If we have you walk, let's say 5 kilometers a day and you lose weight, do you think you're going to continue to get the same weight loss effects 12 months from now as you do today? And of course, everybody says, no, I wouldn't expect that. So yeah, I think we all agree your body does adapt. You can't do what you're doing today and expect it to work the same as a year from now. So it's not, I don't think it's a big stretch to think that there is some adaptation, but the level that, again, I think it's mostly the media will tend to propagate this is what you would expect from the media, I guess.
Yeah, those sensational article headlines that just clickbait essentially to try and draw the eyes, and it's like one study and they pick out one thing from it or something like this. So it's unfortunate. But yeah, maybe I'll have to bring Eric on and dive into that a little bit more. To switch gears a little bit, I know you're celebrating a year of Body by Science now, which is exciting, which I've contributed to, which, if I was to summarize it, you're taking really interesting studies that are kind of the general, like people are very interested, people listening to this podcast will be very interested in, and you're essentially kind of summarizing them, making them easy to digest. You're doing and kind of reviewing it yourself and taking your take homes and kind of the practical takeaways as well. And then you're getting experts who are like colleagues in the field to come in and also give their take on it, how they'd approach it with their clients, if it informed their practice, if they change anything about what they do, which I think is a really cool kind of mix of like practice and also science, because I think a lot of us, that's what the science is trying to inform what we do in practice a lot of the time, and that's kind of what your research is all about. So I think it's really great. And you had this kind of 99 page greatest hits issue, which I think people will be really interested in. So I'll make sure that's linked so people can download that, and then maybe they read that and kind of then want to subscribe afterwards. And I thought we could dive into one of those, which is actually kind of topical because it's something we were kind of just talking about in terms of, it was this one titled, "What Causes Weight Loss Plateau? Metabolic Adaptation or a Lack of Dietary Adherence," where you reviewed this one study. And I thought, it'd be a really interesting one for people to hear about, because I think there's probably a lot of coaches in this kind of podcast listening as well.
Yeah. And while we're talking about the research review, thank you for being one of my expert contributors. You were like the first or second issue, I think.
I think I was second. Yeah.
So thank you. So weight loss plateaus. I mean, if you've coached one person, you've probably heard, "Hey, I'm not losing weight. What do we got to do?" So it makes sense that we, at least me as a fat loss researcher, I have to at least have some working knowledge of what's causing, and I'll call it a perceived weight loss plateau. And this study that you're mentioning, they didn't actually do a study. What they did was they used mathematical modeling, and they used this mathematical modeling approach to say, what is the likely cause of somebody who can't lose weight? Is it because their metabolisms, their metabolic rates, is it because it's slowed down so much that now they actually are having a weight loss plateau? Because what used to be a 500 calorie deficit is no longer a deficit at all because their metabolism is slowed. Or is it because they are not adhering to the diet? So they're essentially eating more calories than what they either believe or what they're reporting. And as we get into this, I think it's important to say the research in this area looks at your typical general pop client or somebody who's sedentary, overweight, or with obesity. So we have to almost appreciate the research is coming from a population that maybe we as weight loss physique coaches there's some clear differences there. So I always want to be careful about making that extrapolation from the research to bodybuilders, essentially, is what I'm saying. And maybe we don't need to be careful, but we at least need to raise the possibility.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you mentioned in it where you're like, hey, competitors are less likely to lack adherence because like they have this like big goal that they're moving towards, lots of experience doing it, that sort of thing. And I guess also as a competitor, you're leaner, so like the stall is more likely to come from, well, you would assume the kind of metabolic adaptations maybe a little bit more harsh versus when you're heavier. I'd guess that might be there too. So yeah, I think that was really important framing.
Yes. Yep.
And so with this, actually, you did also mention it's important because you said a perceived plateau, important to define what a plateau looks like. So I thought that would be maybe a good place to start as well. Like for you, when you're looking at this, what's a plateau?
Well, the researchers they took a definition that's, I would say, pretty brutal. And essentially they're calling a weight loss, they're using the exact, as the term sounds is how they defined it. So they're saying, I am no longer able to lose any weight. So a true weight loss plateau is such that I'm still in a deficit and I'm not able to lose weight anymore at where I used to be. Let's just say it's a 500 calorie deficit every day for week after week, month after month. If they're actually doing that and they get to the point where weight is no longer lowering, no longer decreasing, that is a weight loss plateau. And the authors of the study, they admit that metabolic adaptation and a true weight loss plateau will happen. However, they make the argument based on their mathematical modeling that it happens about 2 to 3 years if somebody were to keep dieting 500 calories per day, there would come a point in time, probably, well, let's just say even 1 to 2 years later, when their metabolism has adapted so much, though, that they cannot lose any more weight unless they reduce their calories more. So really what they were asking in this study was, what's the cause of an early weight loss plateau? Will we admit that a weight loss plateau will occur at some time in the future? But all of the weight loss literature, and I'll just say this is really interesting. They make the claim that weight loss plateaus in the research literature appear to happen at about 6 months. So I have a pretty large library of studies, and there's not a ton of studies that have people diet for a year. But almost every single study that I looked at where they put people on a diet, and again, these are always going to be people with obesity or people that are overweight, it's almost identical what happens. They lose weight for 6 months, and then they start to gain weight back. And it's, again, I just challenge anybody, look at any weight loss study you can find, and if it's 12 months long, see if that's not what you see in whatever study you find. See if they didn't have their peak weight loss at about 6 months, and then they started to go back towards their pre-weight for the next 6 months. So it's fascinating. So that's what these researchers tested, an early weight loss plateau. And what they did, they developed 2 models. They developed one model, which assumed metabolic adaptation. And then in the other model, they made an adherence model, which is they assumed that subjects would not be adhering to their prescribed diet as long. Now, I think it's important to note, first of all, I'm not a mathematician, so I can't talk about the nuances of their modeling. but their models were developed based on real human studies where there were actual weight losses, caloric deficits over periods of time. So the Minnesota starvation trial was one of the studies they pulled data from. There's another series of studies called the calorie trials. They pulled data from that. So these mathematical models weren't purely just drawn up from pure math. They were derived from actual human weight loss trials. And what they concluded was an early weight loss plateau is significantly better explained from a lack of adherence. So when people do not, basically, I'm going to say it like this. At around 6 months, people are sick of dieting. They experience diet fatigue and they start eating more food. And they're saying, hey, I'm not losing any more weight. I need you to help, we need to do some trick here to help me lose weight. When the reality is, at least in this study, what you need is to be adherent to the caloric deficit that you are probably not. That data fit their model much better than the assumption that their metabolisms were slowing down so much in 6 months. So hopefully that helped explain what they found.
Yeah, it was shocking to me, the adherence model, where they kind of looked at predicting how much adherence to the deficit needed to have happened to match the weight loss that occurred. It was like 80% from 1 month, 60% at 2 months, then 50%, 30%, 40% thereafter. And it was just like wild how much adherence had to drop off. Like you'd think someone would, know it in themselves that, hey, I'm 50% less adherent here, but it's kind of wild.
And you're saying the same thing I said as I'm reviewing this. I'm like, nobody's going to care about this. But what I realized was, one, that data those adherence numbers, which were bad, like you said, they were basically adhering half the time. That came from the actual human trials where they had doubly labeled water, where they knew we can predict they would lose this much weight with this much of a caloric deficit. And anything other than that, it has to be from underreporting or not adhering to the diet. The second thing is, again, in our world, nobody's gonna, in my world anyway, people, they're not going to adhere that bad. They might put a scoop and a half of peanut butter on their sandwich, but just say it's one scoop. That's how we cheat. This is a whole different world. Yeah. And again, that's where we have to appreciate there's a world of people out there, a population of people who adhere that poorly. And again, I think we all know that. It's just that in physique and bodybuilding culture, it's likely unheard of. But I think my reason for wanting to include that is a lot of our clientele are people getting into the fitness journey for the first time. And my entire point was, the point I wanted to make, when you have a client that's experiencing a weight loss plateau, let's not assume that it actually is a weight loss plateau. Let's at least make sure that we're covering all of our bases and kind of guaranteeing, are you really following what the prescribed diet is? If you are, great, and then let's talk about how we're going to solve this. But I wouldn't want to make any assumptions that, they're clearly following this diet. And that's especially true if the diet is 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, if we start getting into these very elongated diet phases.
Yeah, I really liked the practical take home from it, where like you don't make any assumptions. Like it can feel a bit confronting if you're like, just accuse your client of not adhering because you're like, hey, look at this, Bill said this, and there's more than likely you're not adhering and you're not actually adapting to it. But you can kind of have a look at it, be like, hey, this is what I think. Can you kind of fully admit that you're completely tracking everything? And I've even gone as far to like get clients to take photos, because sometimes it's not such a lack of adherence, but it's a lack of knowledge of knowing like even how to track food. Sometimes you need to educate them on how to use like MyFitnessPal. You don't just enter in ham sandwich, you kind of make sure it's the bread you've got, the ham, like the right weight of the ham, these sort of things, which I don't work with that type of population very often anymore. But certainly, like I imagine a lot of the people, your audience and a lot of the coaches are probably coaching people like that, where it might literally be they they don't quite understand how these various, like a tablespoon of peanut butter, they might literally think to just scoop it in and then drop it on top. It's like, hey, that might be like 3 tablespoons for the weight.
That's easy to do with peanut butter too. It's easy to do.
For sure. So I thought that was, really nice reminder. But yeah, the stark amount of like lack of adherence, and as you said, it's less common in bodybuilders, but I think it happens like quite heavily. And I imagine like that 50% lack of adherence is probably like days where they're maybe like on it, and then days where they're just like, I don't know, like binging or completely breaking the diet, and they just aren't on it at all. And I can't pretend that binge eating doesn't happen in bodybuilding. So like you just have to, from my perspective, like with clients, get a really good relationship with them, generate a lot of trust, so that they can feel like they can divulge that information. Because it might be that you're like, hey, if you're binging, let's call the diet here. Like maybe it's not even wise to keep going.
Yes. Yep.
So Bill, in terms of, have you got anything else exciting going on with your research review, or anything you can share there, or any other studies going on in your lab?
Yeah. So what we're doing now, we're finishing up a systematic review and meta-analysis where we're comparing what's better for fat loss, cardio or resistance exercise. And what we did was we included every study. The inclusion criteria was a study where there were 3 groups: a cardio only group, a resistance training only group, and a concurrent training group. Because those are the studies that within the same study design, we have a cardio and a resistance training group. And again, it's very hard to match work or time with cardio, but we felt like that was the best approach to try to answer that question. So that's right now that data is being analyzed. My research team is designing a study that's going to help answer the question, what do we do after the diet? So it's this whole, and bodybuilders would gravitate towards a reverse diet or recovery diet. We're looking at, right now, we don't have much research on anything after the diet. So let's contribute something. So we're going to diet people down. And again, we're still in the middle of designing this, but what we know so far, we're going to diet people down, and then we're going to have an intervention after the diet. So probably a group that we give no instructions to, another group that maybe we bring back calories quickly, and another group where it's slower. And then where I'm going to email you, and probably in a week or two, we're doing a survey study to learn from bodybuilding coaches about, hey, what do you currently do with your clients after the diet? So we're going to try to learn as much as we can from experts like you, and then that will help inform us on what we're actually going to study. So that's going to be a survey study. We're waiting for that to get approved. And as soon as that gets approved, we're going to send it out to coaches, because bodybuilders are the ones that really seem to focus on this. In the general population, there's a lot more that can be, there's a lot more of a learning curve there. So that's what we're doing there. And then I already mentioned just my next case study on myself will be some type of rapid fat loss study. So that's what we're doing and what we're going to be doing.
Sounds super exciting. Well, to me, it's super exciting stuff. I think that kind of how to go about the end of a diet is something that's way understudied and way underappreciated by a lot of competitors and also general pop. With the population that you're dieting, are you dieting them down like very lean, or how lean are they getting, out of interest? Do you have that?
Yeah, that remains to be seen. And that's part of our, and I would love, if you have thoughts, please email them to me or just now share. So that's the question. We know that, again, we're not going to get competitive bodybuilders for this. We've already tried to do this study in bodybuilders, and they didn't do what they said they would do. We published it. You can search, instead of us talking about recovery versus a reverse diet, we said, here's what happens after the show, because that's essentially what we got.
Right. Okay. That's interesting in its own right, actually.
It is. Yes. Yeah. If anybody wants to look at that study, if you just Google the phrase JFMK, that stands for Journal of Functional Morphology and Kinesiology. So JFMK Campbell, that study will probably come up. And that was in bodybuilders. So we know that we want to diet them hard enough to make sure that there's significant weight loss, because otherwise we're not, we want to find out what's best after the diet. And the way to answer that question best is to have the largest amount of weight loss, so that if there's rebound, we'll be able to see that. If we do a diet study and they only lose a kilogram, well, I don't think we're going to learn much about what happens after the diet. So right now we're in discussions. How aggressive do we want to be and for how long? So I'm thinking we try to be as aggressive. And let me also say, my students are the ones designing this study. I'm giving input. Dr. Eric Trexler too, he'll be our data analyst for this. So he'll have a big say into the final study design. But yeah, I'm thinking 6 weeks of as aggressive as we can think that our subjects can be in 6 weeks, so that we can then, really answer the question. And again, we have this, we're more than prepared for this study lasting all of 2024. So 12 months long. Probably going to do this virtually, which that's another, that creates a lot of problems and opportunities. With the diet that I just did, I told you that I did a 4-compartment model. So that is the closest thing we can do to measure my true losses of body fat. So you get your bone density, you get your body water, you get your body volume with a bod pod, and those 3 things give you your true, as true as humanly possible body fat percentage. I also tested 4 home scales, so bathroom scales with BIA technology during this. So I'm hoping that one of these scales was really close to being able to detect the changes that the gold standard 4-compartment model did. And if that's so, then we have a scale that we can say to our virtual subjects, use this scale. Or I'm thinking what we're going to do is there a DEXA that you have access to? Use that. Is there an in-body? And so hopefully we can, again, that's going to be some of what we're going to give up. We can't be standard. And if they have nothing, then use this home scale. So that's not great, but it's what we would have. It's how it is. It's a limitation, but it allows us to get more people that could potentially be a subject in this kind of a study.
Yeah, I think it's kind of worth the limitation there, where you get a bit more quantity, despite maybe, I guess, a lack of quality, sorry, but the quality would just lead to you having barely anyone involved, I imagine. So that's exciting. And yeah, I'll be interested to answer any questions about it in terms of all of that, because I have many thoughts surrounding kind of that period of time. And it's even, like I said, it's interesting that you had a study on bodybuilders and they didn't adhere, because I'm sure there's coaches listening, and myself included, like I try and get clients to do a certain approach post-show, and we discuss it ahead of time, but not always does it get adhered to, because it's a really challenging time. So it doesn't surprise me that these bodybuilders were like, they didn't show the adherence that you liked, because in practice that also tends to happen post-show, where people, I don't know, go off the rails a little bit sometimes, not always.
Yes. And I also want to give credit. James Longstrom was my master student at the time. He designed that study. He designed an awesome study. And one of the things we said, hey, bodybuilders, we're going to let you choose what you do after your show. Do you want to go back slowly, or do you want to go back, do you want to increase your calories quickly? So we knew that would help. And even with that, the ones who said they would go back slow sometimes didn't. The ones who said, hey, I'm going to get it back fast, sometimes didn't. So you essentially had you had data that really wasn't a reverse or recovery. So we couldn't take the approach that he really wanted to. That was his, the intent was to compare slow versus fast. So now we're trying it again with non-bodybuilders, essentially.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, I guess the body fat has certain implications to what approach maybe is more appropriate, but it's still useful information to get nonetheless. So yeah, Bill, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure chatting to you. And definitely, as a reminder, I'll make sure that the research review is linked below, so you can kind of get some insights into that with the 99 greatest hits and everything like that, or the 99 pages of greatest hits rather. That'll sound quite different otherwise. And I'm definitely interested in all the studies and research that you're doing, and we'll have to jump on again at some point. Thank you so much for your time, Bill, and we'll catch everyone else very shortly. I want to make sure, first of all, actually, if people aren't already following you, I know Instagram's your main gig. Is there anywhere else people should follow?
Nope, just Bill Campbell, PhD. And then if people are interested in getting this, the free 99-page body, my research review, that's billcampbellphd.com. Just at the very top of the page, you can click on a link and you just put in your email, and then I'll send you you'll have access to the best of year one.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you guys for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality, and we know how to do it, and we will help you achieve this. The Minicut movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.